Hey everybody, welcome to the first installment in this irregular tabletop series that I'm doing, which is going to be over various tabletop games, mostly tabletop RPGs, but I might branch out into other kinds of games as well, maybe card games, board games, just depends on what you guys think. At any rate, we're starting with basics for playing tabletop RPGs, because some people have asked me, how do I get into RPGs, that sort of thing. But I figured I'd go ahead and give you the basic, what you actually need to have physically in order to actually be able to play a tabletop RPG. First things first, you will need a pencil, and you will need paper. You can get these at your local store for usually less than $1, maybe just around $1. Particularly around the start of the school year, they are super cheap. They go on sale all the time. Really easy to pick up a bunch of these, and they last you quite a while. Why do you need pen and paper? Well, obviously, it's pen and paper RPGs. That was one of the other names that you hear them called. And there's a reason for that. You need to take notes. You need to know what kind of story points are going on. You need to know what your character would do, what your character has done. You need to know all sorts of these things and take notes as you're playing. That doesn't need to be super detailed. I mean, you can just say, got golden sword or whatever. But it just has to be something where you actually know what's going on in the given situation. And this goes for GMs as well. If you have never GM'd before, you need to take notes religiously. It's actually more of a thing with GMs than it is for players. So that begs the question of what's a player versus a GM? Well, a GM is the person who's running the game. GM stands for Games Master. You hear alternate terms like storyteller for the World of Darkness system. You hear referee in a lot of systems. I think Traveler uses referee. I haven't actually personally played Traveler, but I know things about it. Dungeons & Dragons uses Dungeon Masters or DM. So the most common terms are usually GM or DM. And this is something else that you need to know when you're playing these tabletop RPGs. Because in addition to taking notes, you will actually need a set of dice. So I just have a bunch of dice that I have here. This is not my set that I normally use when I'm playing, but what you have here is a full set. This is usually the set that you'll be able to find on something like Amazon or something like that. They're not horribly expensive, but the fancier they get, the more expensive they get. Or you can just do this kind of thing and get one of these, which is just a pack of 100, and hope that you get a full set. And then you also have a bunch of extras. So what I usually have for these particular dice is I just have these for extras, in case I need a bunch more of a certain kind of die, or people just forget their dice and don't have them, or things like that. And so that's what a big pack of dice like that is useful for. Or if you just want to use it for decorating things, just have a bunch of dice at your table. You can do that too. It's up to you. At any rate, this is generally considered a full set of dice. What you have here are a 4-sided die, or D4, a normal 6-sided die, or D6, 8-sided die, D8, 10-sided die, D10, 12-sided die, D12, 20-sided die, D20, most commonly associated with, of course, Dungeons & Dragons, among other things. And then last but not least, we have the percentile die, sometimes called a D100 or a D%. I usually call them D100s. And the way these actually work, you take your D10 and your D100, and you roll them together. So in this particular case, we rolled 49. And then usually in a percentile system, you are comparing that to your skill level, and you hope to get under the required skill level in order to actually be able to succeed at what you're doing. Also, I apologize for the camera movement. I don't have anything set up for this. So, suffice to say, percentile dice are kind of weird in how they work. With regards to D&D, you're usually rolling those on tables for the GM side of things to find out what kind of loot the players get, that sort of thing. But generally speaking, there aren't all that many games that actually use D100s for normal play. RuneQuest is one. The Warhammer 40k RPGs like Death Watch and I think Dark Crusade is another one use it, things like that. So that's your full set of dice. You need at least one of those for general play. And then you need the rule books. Now, some systems have multiple rule books, some of them have only one. I'm going to give you two examples that I just pulled off the shelf, basically at random. And these are Dungeons & Dragons, it's specifically 3rd edition, not 3.5, 3rd edition, and Jade Claw, which I found at my store for like 10 bucks, so I was like, I gotta get this. Anyway, this is D&D, 3rd edition. Here you have the player's handbook. You may think, oh, well, this is all I need. Well, yes, if you're a player, this is all you need. If you're the DM, you'll need this, the Dungeons Master's Guide. This actually tells you how to run the game. But this isn't all you'll need either. You'll also need that to actually be able to know what the monster stats are. See, this is one of the things I really hate about Dungeons & Dragons. You need 3 books in order to actually be able to play the damn thing. Now, in more recent editions, they have cut that down a bit, but not by much. And these books are not cheap either. To give you an idea, okay, the price sticker has worn off of that one. Let me find the price sticker in this one. Okay. US. I don't know if you can see that very well. Hopefully the autofocus will kick in. Probably not. Anyway, it says US $19.95. So this is a $20 book. And you need 3 of these. So that's a good 60 bucks right there. Whereas with something like Jade Claw, you only need 1 book. There's Jade Claw. And don't let the Anthro animals fool you, it's actually a pretty cool game. So is Iron Claw, which is the sort of Renaissance fantasy equivalent to this. But this only needs 1 book. And, I mean, you can look in here, and this is generally how they're organized. I mean, they got artwork, they got comics in there, they got tables that make things easier for you, all sorts of things like that. So, usually the books are fairly straightforward with how they're actually produced. Now let me pull up my trusty D&D book here. Maybe. It's a lot of text. D&D books are especially bad about this. They have a lot of text. Occasionally they'll show you a grid map. Some games do actually need grid maps. Dungeons & Dragons 4th edition literally requires one. The other versions of D&D don't require one, but they make things handier. There are a lot of systems out there, actually, that don't require mats or maps of any kind, but they just make it easier to play. RuneQuest, for example, World of Darkness, all sorts of things like that do not require maps, but again, they make it a lot easier for you. So this is pretty much all you really need to get started. As long as you have something to take notes on, you have your dice, you have your rule books, you have your players, and your GM, you're good to go. They're really not as intimidating to get into as you might think. People seem to think they're really hard to get into. Honestly, a lot of people would recommend Dungeons & Dragons to first-time players. I don't. It's not a very intuitive system. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But this rant is forthcoming. Don't worry about that. I'm going to rant about D&D at a later date. But suffice to say, there are plenty of really straightforward, easy-to-learn RPGs out there. And some of them use very unique dice that aren't just this standard set that you have here. For example, Fate uses fudge dice. Fudge and Fate both use the same kind of dice. They are actually D6s, but instead of the numbers, they have plus, minus, and blank faces. And so you get about 4 of those. You roll them at the same time. You add up all the pluses. You subtract the minuses. And zeros, or the blank faces, you just count as a 0. It doesn't mean anything. It's dead weight, basically. And that determines how well you succeeded or how much you failed. There's other dice out there. There's a fairly recent RPG by Fantasy Flight that's Star Wars, and it uses a very unique set of dice that are specific to it. That's Edge of the Empire, or Age of Rebellion, or more recently, Force and Destiny. And it may look daunting, but it's actually really straightforward once you get into it. And these sorts of things, it's easy to get used to this kind of thing. You may think that this is a lot I'm kind of throwing at you all at once, but this is an introductory video here. And suffice to say, I don't really have a set plan for these videos. Again, it's an irregular series. I'm going to do it when I actually have the time to, when I have the inspiration to. And if you guys have any specific topics you want me to talk about, feel free to ask in the comments. I will take a look at those, and if anything comes up that would actually be good to talk about, I will start talking about it. But until next time, folks, this is what you need to get started in terms of physical items, and we'll probably talk about actually getting into the RPGs next time. We'll see. Thanks for watching.